guys, welcome back to CKC Garage, and today's video we are going to talk about this latest Facebook Marketplace find we just purchased and wheeled into the shop. So on Marketplace, this 24 volt Perego RZR 800 and a Gaucho Grande popped up for 40 bucks. So that's basically $20 a piece. So we couldn't get in the truck fast enough, and we got down there and neither one of them worked. It even said it was 4 parts only, wouldn't separate. So we get down there, and we're not going to be too critical, but let's do a walk around and I'll show you what I look for, especially in this is a first generation Perego. So this was $1,000 when it came out, and you can tell the first generation because it has this full roll cage. It's very, very, very rare to have these in working condition and not busted up. Well, this one's had some repairs to it. This one I can see that underneath there's been some PVC replacement. So not a big deal. It's still all here. It's functional. So it looks aesthetically awesome. I'm looking at these bumpers. These things are notorious for being broken. Kids run into something, they break these right here. And right now, guys, these aren't available through Perego. I've got a couple more of these that I'd love to put together and sell, but can't get parts. So, looking at all this, it all looks really good. I walk around, stickers in good shape, no paint fade, right? I do see that they did some DIY LEDs here. I think they tried them in the tail lights and then the fog lights in the front. Not a big deal. I'm probably going to replace these and make them look a little bit more professional. So the biggest thing on these guys is the tires. Now this one, the property that it was located at is on dirt. So these were tires in good shape. And I brought this sample out. This is what you're looking for, guys. They are so thin that they wear through right here. So that's an issue because with shipping, these are like 60 bucks probably. So that's a front tire from a different model. So everything looks good. So what the seller said is he thinks one of the motors is bad. He couldn't remember which one. So we're gonna check that out. And what we have is we just have a 12 volt battery, which it doesn't matter, it's a DC motor. It'll work with some alligator crimp connectors. We're gonna directly connect either to the motor or right at the controller. And then we also have just a cheapy Harbor Freight voltmeter. We're going to use this to diagnose if it's a switch. So let's get back to the rest of this. Oh, because this has bucket seats and it is somewhat adjustable, so you can take these nuts off and slide it forward for your younger drivers. In this first generation, it's just got a shifter with the high-low down here at the pedal. I've seen people complain, say this thing's 24 volts, it's so slow. Well, you got to take the screw out of the side and slide it so the high is exposed, and that engages high speed to click in. Oh, and this first generation also has a battery meter, but because they swapped out the control board, this is no longer functional. It actually is missing the wire that goes up to the control board, so it's just dangling there. So no more 24 volt control board. It does have a working radio, but obviously we need batteries, and I did post a video on how to replace the batteries because people think that it's tied into the 24 volt system. So under the seat, driver's seat, is the control board, and under the passenger seat is the 24 volt battery. So you unplug this, and included in it they had this aftermarket 24 volt charger. So that just plugs into the wall, you unplug it and plug it in. And the battery seems to work good. Tested it, 25 volts. And they did give me some parts. So hopefully it's the right motor. We're just gonna get this apart and see what it's about. And then we are gonna talk about this Gaucho in another video, so we'll break that down, and it needs a paint job. So anyways, guys, we'll be right back with getting this apart and diagnosing what's wrong with this Perego RZR. All right, so we got our little test wiring wired up to the battery. I'm going to go ahead and we disconnected it from the control board. We're going to clip on the negative. Well, that motor works. Now we're going to undo the other electrical tape and check the passenger side. So normally we just use these female blade connectors, but we didn't want to take the whole thing apart, and we just stuck a fuse in there, plugged it into the stock connector, and when we go to test the motor by connecting it to a power source, so there is something wrong with the passenger side motor. So we're going to take the wheel off and see if it's a motor or a disconnected wire. Cross fingers for a disconnected wire. So on these razors, to get to the gearbox and motor, you have to take off this hubcap, and it has these 4 prongs on it. This is from the driver's side because I'm probably going to have to put a wrench on that because the axle's going to want to spin. And you can see it was previously broken off by somebody. So these little paint can lid tools, a lot of times you can just get underneath it to start it. And it comes right off. Well, we'll see if the old 13mm, look at that, spun right off. Didn't need to get to the other side. And that's what the wheel looks like. Here's the wheel driver, the spline that goes into the gearbox. And now I'm going to need Phillips screwdriver, or the old Milwaukee, and take this cover off. Oh, and this also does have 2 little tabs at the ends that need to be released. Regular flat blade screwdriver will probably work a little bit better, and that's how you get the cover off. And then push the axle in. Ideally you could even pull it out the other side. And look at that. The motor's not even attached. Ta-da! So we will reattach it, and I don't know which polarity. There's a black and a white. I don't know which one's which, but we'll get this going again. And I noticed that the other side, we're not going to put it back together, but I did notice that the other side, when it was in forward, the motor was spinning in reverse, telling me somebody was in there playing with it. So let's get the other gearbox out. We'll switch the polarity and we'll see which way this one spins, and hopefully we're back in order. All right, so I went out to the truck to get the spare motors that I got with these. I was pretty excited, and then I opened the box and see that these are just little 550 series motors. They're probably 13 tooth pinion. I haven't counted that yet, but that is the wrong one. This is the motor we need. Luckily I have a box full of these, but this is a 775 13 tooth pinion with a 5mm bore in a 32 pitch. So I got excited. I saw the motor unhooked and I figured that was it. But then when I hooked the motor up to my little testing jig, I think you can see that in the screen, battery's right here, nothing, no juice. So this motor's bad. We're going to put the new motor in, slap her back together, and get this ready to sell. So to swap out this motor, there's 2 screws. These are Phillips head. And when you get this motor off, it does also have this little alignment, I don't know what you want to call it, washer. So make sure that that stays in place. I like to leave my screws in, grab your motor, And as you're holding the screws, I like to kind of eyeball where they're going to be. And you can kind of feel them, like kind of go in the groove a little bit. And you don't want to over torque those. So now we'll get our little tester out again. One on each brass tab of the motor. One on each motor lead. Should work. It's a brand new motor. So we're going to put this all back together, and this RZR is done. So putting it together, on this side the white wire gets the positive. Tuck that back in there. Reinstall your 4 screws. And you've got all these parts here. Inside of this driver was a bushing that goes around the axle. So push your axle back through, and this is the bushing so that it doesn't have slop. It's got this spline. And you got to make sure you get the circles on the back of the wheel lined up. So the axle wasn't all the way through, but there it is. And technically, before you put everything back together, I'd give it a test first. Everything seems to work. And with the impact, you can get that on there without even having to hold a wrench on the other side. The lock nut's fully engaged. Put your hubcap back on and call it a day. Alright guys, so we got the motor replaced. We were all happy. We said everything works, but guess what? I realized as you're pushing the gas pedal, it's actually supposed to trigger the high speed. This is the Gen 1, so the high speed lockout is down here at the pedal. So you take this screw off the side and you slide that up so that engages the ability for high speed. In the newer models, the high speed lockout is actually on the shifter, and I'll put a picture of that right here. Okay, so when I press this, it wouldn't engage. So I took the pedal apart, and now when you press it, you can hear the relays in the control board kick in. That's what it was supposed to do. So I figured, hey, why not help people out here? So this has been upgraded with the new wiring and the new control board. And over here, I laid out some parts. So if you guys got one of these 24-volt RZRs and it seems slow, don't sell it, you can fix it. And I got a couple other tips here too. Okay, so depending on which model you guys have, there's gonna be different control boards. You can see these are totally different. This one actually has poly switches built right into the control board. And what a poly switch is basically kind of like a fuse. So if it overloads, these trip. The problem is these, over time, if they trip, they get weak. So what you can do is actually unplug this from the wiring harness. It doesn't go here because that's the motor wires. But you can this is what the wiring harness looks like. And you can literally just replace it with ATF or automotive type fuses. Right here, I just put some random ones in there to show you guys that you can swap those out. they'll still pop, but it's not nuisance tripping. Oh, and I got curious, because that's what I am, is a curious kind of personality. I took the old motor apart, and what I did discover is it's got a couple broken off fins, and the armature windings were baked, and one of these little wires, if you can see that, broke. So broke wire equals no working motor, because the brushes themselves were in good shape. So I'll put a link to the description of a new motor, replacement motor, and let's get on to how to fix your high speed. So this is a newer pedal. You can see that it doesn't have the lockout on it. It's now in the shifter. This is a newer one, but it's all I had. So let me show you guys how to test that. Okay, so here's your pedal, and it comes apart with these 3 screws, and you can pull it off. The switch is missing here because I've had to use this. So this is the switch right here. It's a plunger type momentary switch, and when you press that, it closes the circuit. And how do you test this? You put your voltmeter in ohms, and right now it's an open circuit, but when you press it, there's no resistance, or very little. So when I popped this one open, I tested like this, and it stayed open. It was not closing. So I got lucky. I took and I sprayed electric parts cleaner around it, just cleaned it all, because what can happen is carbon can get built up in there like soot, and it worked. If not, I will put a link to the description in the video of a new, hopefully it can find just this, looks like a 1/2-inch plunger switch. If not, the whole gas pedal, and then you get a new switch in that too. So once I did that, put it back together, she fired up, and I already showed you that it triggers the high speed. Now if that doesn't do it, it could be your control board, guys, because there's relays in here, and those can go bad too. In my opinion, I'm not a fan of any of the stock stuff. I would highly recommend looking into replacing it with like a scooter controller, and I've got a beat up RZR I'm going to do a build on. We'll be upgrading one to 36 volts so you can get, I don't know, 10, 12 miles an hour, and it's just a more dependable system. So that's basically it, guys. We got this $20 RZR. We thought it was an easy fix with the motor. He had the wrong motors. It was just a little bit of labor and some diagnosing. I didn't really have to spend a ton, so now I'm going to get this cleaned up, probably put some lights in it, and resell it. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for what's coming up. Racing season is in about a month, and we have Hellcar X here. Maybe we'll do some videos on that. Top secret chassis here, but stay tuned.